returned. So, today I wanted to talk about Ari Aster. I want to start this series, Director Deep Dive, to really get into the nitty-gritty of what defines directors and what makes them important within the horror genre to me. This may not be the case for anybody else, but I really think that Ari Aster changed the game for horror, and especially with his release of Hereditary in 2018, that really kind of signified a shift in modern horror movies. And I'm sure that could be accredited to something else, but for me, that's when I noticed the shift. I noticed it in my own life and all around me, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but I wanted to start off with some little anecdotes. Speaking of turning points, I wanted to talk about two movies that were turning points for horror in my life and my personal favorites that I go back to rewatch all the time. The first movie I wanted to mention was Insidious, and if you know me, you know how much I love that movie, regardless of all its problems and how much it's aged and the campiness of it. I love it all, okay? I love the big devil guy, alright? I like him sharpening his nails. I like the creepy music. And I really remember how scary that scene with the little kid was. When she's outside, taking out the trash, and the little kid's dancing all around and stuff. Yeah, to me that was scary, alright? And I rewatched that scene on YouTube like 30 times when I was a kid, alright? Because I loved that movie. Regardless of how dumb it is, I loved it. And it really invigorated me and made me want to keep watching it and made me interested in horror all over again. And to me, it was a big turning point in horror because we got one of the best franchises, the Insidious franchise. I'm not saying the whole series is good, but I'm just saying it has such a specific style and led to a lot of other series that James Wan ended up making. And I think it's such a good starting point for me to start with this conversation because it's such a unique movie. Now, the second movie that I wanted to talk about is one of my personal favorites, for no reason, just because of how creepy it was the first time I watched it, is Sinister. Sinister not only has one of my favorite horror soundtracks of all time, because it utilizes household sounds and all those things, it has one of my favorite monsters of all time. He is so creepy. Not just his makeup, but his whole concept is terrifying. Are you kidding me? Snatching children up and keeping them in another dimension? Like, that's scary, man. When I watched it for the first time, all of the film reels and stuff like that, it was such a unique concept. And it stars Ethan Hawke. I mean, what more can you ask for, you know? The jump scares really hit, and it's such a rewatchable one for me. I always go back to that one periodically because of how much I enjoyed it the first time. I still remember being addicted to the soundtrack after I watched it for the first time, and it was not when it first came out. I was in high school when I watched it for the first time, and that movie is way older than that, okay? I just wanted to talk about those movies because of how much they invigorated that love of horror again in me, and how it was sort of a turning point for horror movies for me personally. So now, let me set the scene for you. Moving back to Ari Aster, the subject matter of this video, I want to take you back to the premiere of Hereditary, the beautiful year of 2018. Me and my dad kept seeing trailers for this movie that whole summer, so we were really excited about it. We were like, first opening weekend, we're going to go see it. We're going to make a point, we're going to go see it because we were that excited about it. So we went to the theater in my hometown. So we went opening weekend. We thought some people were going to be there. Turns out nobody was there. So it was just me and my dad in an empty theater in the very center of the room watching this movie alone. To me, that was the perfect viewing experience for this movie on the first time. It was incredible. I wasn't even really sure what we had just watched. I just knew that I liked it. After we watched it, we sat there in the parking lot. We didn't even know what to say. We were just silent because we were struck by this movie, decked in the face by the plot of this movie. So that week goes by, I can't stop thinking about it, so I drag a few of my friends to go to a bigger theater in another city to go see it. Now, this was the second weekend, so everybody had already heard about it. So we went to a packed theater, a literally full theater. So full that we had to get front row seats, which is never good in a movie theater. And we watched it, which I think kind of tarnished the viewing experience for my friends. But for me, it really solidified the sensation that that movie was. And I knew after that second viewing, this is something else. This is something completely new. This is something that's going to change the game. And guess what it did, baby? It did exactly that. It changed the game. It kind of had the Hereditary effect, I'm going to call it. Because movies after that really changed. I'm just saying, for modern horror, I definitely saw a turn. I definitely saw a shift in what kind of movies were being made, what was accepted by audiences. It's not a concept that would be accepted by the mainstream. So for it to be that successful in the first couple weekends, and to get him a second movie, he's a genius, man. This has to be the perfect placement because Hereditary poster, Midsommar poster. And we're talking about Ari Aster today. Oh, this just lined up just right, baby. Ooh. I think this really was a shift for horror because of the risk that he was willing to take. And I don't think to him it was a risk, because if you go back to his other short films, which there are many of them online, they're all very different styles. There's always a sort of traumatic element to all of them. But the main one people know is Something Strange About the Johnsons. I never want to relive that experience, seeing it for the first time. It's too much for me. It just is. I know people that don't know Ari Aster by name, but know about that short film. And I think that's what really got him notoriety in the first place. The variety of short films that he made before that. The places he was willing to go to that a lot of people hadn't been before. So I think he's willing to do the things that a lot of other people either don't want to do, don't want to risk doing to lose money, or don't have the ability to create something like that in a way that's palatable for a mainstream audience. You look at the subject matter of a movie like Hereditary, you're not really able to fathom how a lot of people would be down with it when you first look at it. On paper, it seems like a concept that would be really, really jarring to most people. And it is on the first viewing, and a lot of people say they still can't rewatch it because of how traumatizing it is. If you want to talk about visually scary, we could talk about the swimming in the air scene, because that literally stayed in my brain forever. Like, I get so excited thinking about that because it's hard to really get scared, you know? And I really like to be scared. So when I'm really scared from a movie, I get so excited. Even thinking about it now, thinking about seeing that scene for the first time and not being able to see what's really going on, not being able to focus on it and clearly know what it was. That alone was terrifying. But then you have on top of that all of the traumatic things going on. Not just for the characters in the movie, but for the audience experiencing it too. And I think he was always good at doing things like that. You look at something like Beau is Afraid, the short film, which you can't watch anymore because the movie's coming out, unfortunately. Not unfortunately that the movie's coming out, unfortunate that you can't watch the short film. Anyway, and I think that's something that he's very good at, and why he's so unique is because he's able to make these things palatable enough to get people to watch it, all the while disturbing you so deeply, like way under your skin. Which to me is what makes such a good horror movie, is when it pulls that fear out of you. And to me, that's what made it such a big turning point in horror, because of that fear that it pulled out of me, that excitement, that invigoration that I was talking about earlier with those other movies. I had felt that a little bit with some other movies before Hereditary, but not as intensely, not as clearly as when I watched that for the first time. And that's why he's my first director on this list of director deep dives, because I really want to go into why this really impacted so many people and why people still talk about it to this day as if it just came out. The online culture that promoted his name and, you know, got him notoriety to be able to make Hereditary is what got people excited about his second movie, Midsommar. I remember when that trailer dropped. from the minds of Hereditary, everybody was on board. Everybody was excited. They knew it was going to be crazy. And because they had already seen Hereditary, they knew they were in for some messed up stuff, okay? And we got that, baby. We got that messed up movie. I think what's so smart about it is the aesthetic is so on point. He knew exactly what he was making, just like with Hereditary, but in a totally different way with Midsommar. But I think following up Hereditary is such a dark and somber and messed up movie, with Midsommar, also a dark and somber and messed up movie, but with a setting of very bright coloring, with florals everywhere, with Florence Pugh as the main actress. Everything in that movie is pretty to look at, but everything you're experiencing is terrible. It's just so perfect. Like, I mean, you know, that's exactly what he was going for. He had the resources he needed to make that exactly how he wanted to. And we got this masterpiece. We got Midsommar. Not only was it just a year after the first movie, Hereditary, it took the world by storm, just like Hereditary did. How often do you see that happen? How often do you see two separate movies, not a sequel, from the same director come out the following year that hit that hard, that really, really get audiences to the movies, that really got audiences to want to watch it, because they knew his reputation from Hereditary, and even before from Something Strange About the Johnsons. He made that style for himself. He made that name for himself, and he really turned around the horror genre. People were excited to go see horror movies again. I really saw that turning point, and I really saw how people were reacting to it. I just remember everybody I knew talking about that movie, even if they didn't like horror movies. And I think that's what really signified that shift for me, was when you see people who don't even watch horror movies interested, or not even interested but know about the movie. Those two movies could not be a better first two. I can't wait for Beau is Afraid. I keep seeing people talk about Beau is Afraid as if they really don't know what to expect because of how happy it looks. If you know about the original short film, you know that it's just fear. That's the whole thing about the short film, is that it was only about his fear, and you didn't know what it was. You saw a little glimpse at the end of what it was that he was afraid of, but all we saw was his fear preventing him from leaving his house. The weird things going on outside of his home when he so rarely did leave. Building on that, you can imagine what the movie's gonna be like. Hyper surrealist, very imaginative, but still extremely scary. I know we're gonna get traumatized watching this movie. It's just his nature. It's just what I would expect from Ari Aster. So don't think it's not gonna be scary, because it's definitely going to be. Regardless of how scary, I am sure it's gonna be scary. I'm really excited for that movie. I can't wait for it to come out. I can't wait to talk about it when it comes out, because I am anticipating it with every fiber of my being. Now I kind of want to talk about why I think the horror genre is so successful right now. I think because of the freedom that has developed within the horror genre, it's not really a risk anymore to make a movie like Megan, for example, a movie about an AI doll that dances around, because people are going to be excited about it regardless. People are going to go watch it no matter what. And it's just really exciting to have these movies that before that point would not garner an audience in theaters, would not drive people to go see it. But now we have this culture where horror is really invigorating. Horror is anything. Horror is everything. We've been seeing that in the last few years. So many amazing horror movies have come out. Barbarian being one that comes to mind always, because of how experimental it is. I'm just so excited that we're at this point now where directors feel like they can really make these movies and garner audiences, because they will. And that's what makes me so excited. It really has reinvigorated people's love for the horror genre. And I think it started with Hereditary. Like I said before, it could be from anything else. He could have not been the originator, but from my witnessing of movies in the horror genre, I think it was from that. I think from that point forward, we really saw a change in horror. We really saw an opening up, a blossoming of what it could be. And ever since, we've gotten great movie after great movie, and weird movie after weird movie, and campy movie after campy movie, and I'm so down for it all. I'm so excited for what's to come. Horror movies are my favorite thing in the world, and it makes me so happy that they're getting so much recognition and that so many people are liking them and seeing them and paying money to see them. Oh, it's amazing. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's like a hobby for me. So I get really excited when people go see movies in the theater, and especially horror, because it is my favorite genre. The thing that I wanted to highlight was obviously Ari Aster and what he's done for the horror genre. Not just the horror genre, but for the horror community. I mean, he opened up so many doors for so many people, so many directors and creators and writers. One director with his backstory can make this sort of change for the entire genre. And I think that's what I wanted to highlight. And that's why I started off with him in this series. Because for me, none of the people I'm going to talk about after this would have the place in the community that they do now. I am really excited as to where this is going to go. This is the start of a series. I already have the next couple people lined up. Director Deep Dives for me aren't really going to be about their background. I'm more interested in the specific projects that they made that garnered so much attention and that really got people talking about the horror genre. That's what I'm going to be focusing on. I do recommend watching the movies that I talk about. If you haven't seen them, I'm talking about them because I'm passionate about them and I think that they're great. So if you haven't seen those movies, definitely watch them. Anticipate Beau is Afraid. Who knows what it's going to be like? I'm going to be there to see it as soon as it comes out. So we'll see what happens. Stay tuned for more Director Deep Dives. I'm really excited to keep this going. I had a lot of fun getting back into this. So I'm really excited for this series. I hope you guys enjoyed. And stay tuned for next time for the next Director Deep Dive. Bye, guys.